morning. Saint Francis of Assisi was a 13th century monk whose name is synonymous with kindness. Once on a preaching mission to a nearby town, he invited a novice to accompany him. On their way, they saw an injured man lying at the side of the road. Francis stopped, tended to the man's need, and like in the parable of the Good Samaritan, he also arranged for medical treatment for him. Next, they encountered a homeless man who was at the point of starvation, and St. Francis gave the man something to eat. And that's the way the whole trip went, stopping and caring for needs as they encountered them. The day was getting away, so he told his apprentice that it was time for them to return to the monastery for evening prayers. But the young man said, "Sir, you said we were going to preach to the people." Francis smiled, and then he said, "My friend, that's what we have been doing all day long." Of course, St. Francis is known worldwide for his famous saying, "Preach the gospel everywhere you go. Use words when necessary." And really, sometimes when we can't reach people any other way, they can be touched by our compassion. Kindness is always rewarded, though not always in the expected ways. The late writer and editor Fulton Oursler tells about an elderly couple who experienced kindness from the manager of a small hotel in Philadelphia years ago. The weather that night was horrible. The husband asked the manager if he could possibly rent a room to them, but the hotel was full. Every room was occupied. It was well past midnight, and the manager couldn't bring himself to send this elderly couple out into the inclement weather, so he did something very unusual, even for an era that was generally kinder than ours. He gave them his room, telling them that he had to work all night anyway, and the grateful couple accepted that offer. The next morning, when checking out, the elderly man commented, "You're the kind of manager who should be boss of the best hotel in the United States. Maybe someday I'll build one for you." Both men laughed, but the one making the suggestion was serious. And sure enough, several years later, that young manager received a letter from New York City requesting him to make a visit to the Big Apple. A few days later, he arrived at the address, the corner of 5th Avenue and 34th Street, directly in front of a brand-new hotel, a splendid structure of reddish stone with turrets and watchtowers, like a castle from fairyland cleaving the New York sky. Waiting for him at the curb was the elderly man he had helped years earlier with the announcement, "This is the hotel I have just built for you to manage." The news nearly caused the young man, George C. Bolt, to faint. The old man was William Waldorf Astor, and the hotel was none other than the famous Waldorf Astoria Hotel. Of course, that story is the exception to the rule, but I've learned over the years that kindness will come back to us in some form or fashion. Unfortunately, sometimes kindness is never acknowledged by the one receiving it, but somewhere, some way, it will come home. And an excellent side benefit to being kind is the good, warm feeling it brings each and every time we do it. I'm Larry Hatfield. Good day.